Hello, rollers. Hello, listeners of the future. Hello. Welcome back to another edition. Oh, I like the waving in the background. It's very fun. Fun with Zoom. We love fun with Zoom here at the Roll Report. Welcome back to another episode of Class and Up the Joint. This is where we ask awesome people ridiculous questions. I am your host, Colin. I use they and he pronouns, and I am the GM and creative director for the Roll Report. I am joined, as always, by a fantastic and wonderful guest who I will let introduce himself. Please go for it.
Hi, I'm Mike Myler. I've been a full-time freelance RPG game designer in the tabletop industry for 10 years now. I do all kinds of stuff. I manage the Level Up Advanced 5th Edition project. I am the editor for eInsider. I have a bunch of licensees who sell my campaign settings. I teach a course on making campaign settings. Rolling dice is my life.
And so many of us, I think, are aiming for that. It's so cool for me to meet someone and get to talk to you as someone who's been doing the things that I want to be doing for such a long time.
It's doable, but it's not easy. I used to be like a landscaper, and I look fondly back on the days where I just hauling around 120 pound bricks, because like sometimes that was easier than what I do now. I didn't love to move the bricks. So,
but you get the satisfaction of a physical task that has been complete. When I dug a hole for that tree, there was a hole where there was no hole before.
Right? Yeah, I drive by retaining walls that we put in, and I'm like, that was me.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like anything else, I can only assume that that freelance RPG writing and game running and the things is, as all things, a hustle, and how hard you want to hustle, how hard you want to sell yourself, sort of thing.
It's not as bad as it used to be. The pay has gotten better. Like the basement for pay in the RPG industry for designers used to be the same as pulp writers in the 1920s. Now it's more like pulp writers in the 1940s. So,
hey,
progress.
2 decades is like progress, and 2 decades of pay progress for the 1 decade you've been writing. So it seems like a reason, another 100 years.
Catch up
and we'll
before I die,
up.
maybe. It's possible.
Oh man, I certainly hope so. I would love that. Well, so Mike, the thing that I've been asking a lot of people, where did you get started? I think this is like, the superhero origin story of your RPG playing or GMing.
Okay. So first time I played, I was like 9, and my eldest sister's friends were playing, and I didn't really quite grasp everything that was going on, but I was like, this is awesome. This is like the best video game in the world. You just do whatever. Yeah. And then I tried running it a little bit in high school for my friends. It was a terrible masked ploy to charm this girl who was never interested in me. And then,
but did it work?
No. She was not into it at all.
Okay.
I mean, like, we're friends and stuff. We're still friends, but like, no, it's just another in like dozens and dozens and dozens of. I should have just learned my lesson and stopped.
The tabletop friends stick around 20, 30 years later.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. We were just talking the other day. But yeah, then I got into like a really good game near the end of high school with a guy jamming named Chris Rippey, who just released his first fiction work. It's called Anti-Hero Blues, I think is the name of the title.
Anti-Hero Blues. Yeah. We'll put it in the show notes. More books. Love it.
There you go, Chris. Boom. And yeah, I at that point, that was like the heyday of D&D 3.0, 3.5, and it was I mean, you can't do it these days because we all have lives, but like we did like 14-hour games. We'd start like 3 in the afternoon on Sunday, and I'd like sneak into my parents' house at like 5 in the morning to go to school the next day. Yeah. And then I took a little bit of break during college. I was too busy getting drunk and then playing rugby. And then afterwards, I got into a game.
College pursuits.
Yeah, right. Like rugby is college is good. A friend of mine I met at like a punk house invited me to play with his group at this like squatter's house in uptown Pittsburgh.
Cool.
And then that is where my first campaign setting began, called Varanthia. And after a while, when I got released from my job, I was working for a dim sum restaurant on the street. And I didn't know what to do next after that ended. And my girl, my lady, Stephanie, was like, spend so much time working on your RPG stuff. Like, somebody would probably pay you for that. And I was like, oh. And somebody did. And that was like the best drug ever. So after I got my first hit, I just been chasing that dragon for a decade now.
It's a damn good dragon to chase.
Yeah.
I feel lucky that I got my first bit of publishing in very quickly, but now I'm just like, wait, when's the next one? And it might be that I have to make that opportunity for myself. Who knows?
Well, if you want to write for E-Insider, we're always taking writers. Payment is 6 cents a word, but it's only for like a limited license to your words. So like Ian Publishing can publish your words forever, but it's exclusive for like a year, and then you can go and republish in your own book or sell it to somebody else or whatever you want to do. All the stuff I've ever written for them is worked into my campaign settings. So it's like you get paid twice.
Yeah, you get paid. You're getting paid to develop your own campaign. I love that. Every character I've made for home games in the last 4 years plus has like shown up in my campaigns. I'm like, yeah, I've done the work already. Why would I not?
The thing behind me is actually from E-Insider, which if you're looking for D&D content is the best deal anywhere. I think we're up to 587 issues, and you give us like $3 a month and you get all of them.
Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Thousands of pages of content.
Is as you've been writing for this, is it's character classes, NPCs, locations, world settings. It's all the things. Take your insane ideas from home games.
My favorite series for E-Insider is called Enchanted Trinkets, because I love to give out treasure, but then like there's the GM like regret, like, oh god damn it, I shouldn't have given that to you. But Enchanted Trinkets are just like one-off, very cool usage, or otherwise it's just like good flavor, and it's like 35 gold or whatever for this bracelet. So it's great like GM snack treasure. And
nice, like inconsequential small magics. It's a bracelet that lets you cast minor illusion once a day or something.
The best example would be, remember Hitchhiker's Guide, where they have the knife that cuts and also makes toast at the same time?
Yes.
That's Enchanted Trinkets right there.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I feel like Hitchhiker's Guide and like Discworld sort of things is really good inspiration for all these like utterly useless and I'm trying to remember so when I was young, there was this book that I remember that was called The Art of the Unuseless Invention. And it was full of, it was a like Japanese, I want to say artist, like performance artist, something fucking weird. And it was full of things like, you know, the fake hand that you put in front of your mouth when you're trying to toothpick your
I
your
think this guy is just walking around in Daiso stores, man.
I mean, could have been. The personal umbrella hat was one that I'm like, oh, that was a real thing, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like he's just rolling around.
Amazing. What was the first thing that you sold? I'm so curious now. What was that first hit of the dragon?
The first two things I sold still haven't been published. One was called Unrest in Sirente, which was like this adventure where you had to choose between helping like a tribe of berserkers and like a circle of druids. And the other one was called Prendergast Fair, which is this like huge sprawling carnival that had like a bunch of references to like Dave Arneson, Gary Gygax, Sean K. Reynolds, and all these people who made the game that it is today, right? But yeah, neither one has seen publication. I got paid for them, so like, thanks, man. But
in some ways, I'm like, is that the best outcome or the worst outcome? Where you have already gotten the pay, and you're like, well, my baby's out there in the world, and at some point I'll see it, maybe.
The worst outcome is if you like write something that you can't use later and don't get paid for. That would be the worst.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope. That's fair.
This is like a little bit above that. I still got paid. That's the important part. But like, it would have been nice to see those realized.
Well, and I guess like still in the theme of freelancing, like can you resell those? Can you rewrite them and publish them? It sounds like, I guess it's been a decade since someone was like, I want that, and then has been sitting on it.
So most contracts don't include any kind of like measures that demand a publisher actually use your work. They're paying you for the work. They have to pay you for the work. You have to do the work. That's all in the contract. But like after that, that's not covered in a standard work for hire contract, which is what most freelancing gigs are. It's all work for hire.
Right. I mean, do you want an opportunity to drag whoever has refused to publish that?
No. Like I said, he paid me. It's like, that's cool. Thanks, man.
No,
I don't think he does stuff anymore. I could probably, redo it and publish, but I'd rather just write something new.
Move on to the next thing. Speaking of moving on to the next thing, why not? Let's start with our first utterly inane but fascinating question very revealing of characters. Mike, what is your favorite character class?
My favorite official character class is the sorcerer because I am a born diplomancer, so I need the charisma bonus, and I love the versatility that they get out of metamagic and the access to. They don't get the best access to spells, but they get to cast them more than anyone else. So, yeah, that's my go-to. If I sit down and everyone's like, "Well, play whatever," I'm like, "Okay, sorcerer."
I feel like I feel like there's a perception that sorcerers in 5e really get kind of the short end of the caster stick in some ways. And I tend to think that's because actually this is something I guess I come back to a lot. They are more useful, or the things they can do and the abilities they have been granted are more useful in a campaign, in a long setting, than in a one shot where they might do a lot of damage.
Being able to silently cast stuff, forget about it. Forget about it. That's it.
I think a lot of players forget the verbal / somatic component thing, and then they're like, you're in a social setting, and someone's like, I would like to cast detect thoughts, and your DM might be going, so you make a gesture and you start saying a string of arcane words, and we're like, no, wait, I didn't do any of that. And you're like, well, you didn't cast a spell unless you were a sorcerer.
Verbal components can be heard. That's how it works.
Yeah. Do you have favorite meta magics within that?
Silent spell obviously is the take home winner. I think distant spell doesn't get enough love. It's useful sometimes. It's not as useful as silent. And then twin spell. Everyone loves twin spell, right? And then quicken spell too. But that's like not again. That takes the backseat.
I mean, they're all kind of. Is there one that you think is garbage?
What is it? Heightened spell where you pay like 2 or 3 to have one creature make the save with disadvantage.
3 sorcery points to give one target disadvantage on its first saving throw.
Or I could spend 1 to get silently, or no.
I agree. I think that's the opportunity to try to do that. By the time you can do that to the one big bad that you're facing, it probably has magic resistance or a legendary at that point.
Say legendary,
yeah. I'm also, for me, I find twin spell to be such an interesting one because of how often I see it. I don't want to say misinterpreted, but that the letter of its rules of a single target spell gaining a second target are not followed or are just not considered.
It's a paper tiger. It looks better on the outside than it actually is.
It can. I mean, a twinned witch bolt, just tether yourself to 2 people with lightning and just keep doing D12s of damage consistently as long as you're within 60 feet. Like, not a bad idea, but yeah, I don't know.
Invisibility. Like, it has its use, but it's...
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is I'm looking at it because I, of course, am like pulled up the sorcerer class and looking. I want to ask you about extended spell.
It's okay. It's. I mean, like, how often does it come up? Really? Like, I have it on most of my sorcerers because, like,
sure,
you start to run out. But like, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking again about the diplomancer, right? If you are on some level the face of the party and are doing more an enchantment based cast, like more hold persons or friends or things like, or charm and things like that, and you can double the duration of the time that someone is charmed or double. I don't know if you took gas. Someone told me how to pronounce it properly and I can't remember, but the like hardcore, you must follow my rules or take massive psychic damage spell, and it's already, I think, 30 days.
Well, extend spell.
Oh wait, it has a limit of some sort.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was thinking. Like, for most of the stuff like suggestion or whatever, like you don't need extend spell for it. I would consider using it for, what would I use it for? What have I used it for?
I'm thinking out loud more
might
than
be the one
else.
thing where I really got the usage out of it, and I was like upcasting it already. So it's like everybody's invisible for like 2 hours.
Long
Enough to get all the way across the city or
Nice.
into a castle.
Awesome. So you specifically said of official content, Sorcerer is your favorite. So tell me about unofficial content, and I'm going to say tell me about because I probably have zero idea about it, but I would love to know more.
Okay. Behind me is the cover for the Masterclass Codex, and the Diabolist appears both in that and in the Book of Exalted Darkness, which is much better cover art.
Ooh, that's a nice one. Yeah.
But yeah, the Diabolist is a summoner, which if you ever played Pathfinder, summoner is the most broken class in Pathfinder. This is much more, it's not like you get a suit of armor buddy, it's like you summon demons and devils and undead, which is very fun.
It's the annoy your DM class because there's a million new creatures in combat.
It annoys the whole table, right? Like if you're there with like 5 other people, like you've just ruined the economy of play because you now have like 4 turns. But if you just got like one other player, or if you're playing solo, that's where it like really shines. And it's like that's one of those like great niches for third-party publications to fill in. Because like that's not what WotC's worrying about when they're making their classes. They're thinking about like 4 or 5 people at the table. But yeah, the Diabolist, it's very fun. It's another charisma heavy class. They get the ritual casting in it is really weird. So like they get cantrips. They get to pick from cleric and wizard cantrips. They got good choices there, and then they don't get any spell levels. They can just cast ritual spells. I think it's like up to a level equal half their level, and it can be any ritual spell, but they only get like so many ritual spells per long rest.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very like Sherlock Holmes casting.
Yeah. Is it, do you always have to cast as a ritual? You always have to take the full 10-minute plus. Okay. Wow.
Well, you're Diabolist. You're like a hermetic, magician. You're you're making the circles. That's the feel for the class.
When I think as a DM, I'm going like, well, then you surprise them at night when they are not prepared and they can't take 10 minutes to summon a thing, sort of.
Well, you can summon a thing faster. You get these Diaboli points where you can just do it as an action. But if you want to cast like Detect Magic or any of the detection spells, really, that's a 10-minute endeavor.
How does it compare to official caster classes in I guess hit dice and its saving throws?
I think they have good hit dice. Yeah, they have D8 hit dice. So they've got like nice casters.
Totally decent.
And then their saving throws are wisdom and charisma. So they get a good one. Get one good one.
Yeah.
And they've got other stuff going on. They get these other different feats and things. But the main thing is, Diaboli points, spend them, conjure stuff. If you want to do magic, you got to do magic old school. That's what it is.
Yeah. And as I'm hearing you say this, I feel like it's also a little bit, it sounds some elements have been taken from Sorcerer in like, I would compare sorcery points to Diaboli points a little bit and trying to take some of the coolest and best elements of a number of different classes and make them your own.
I made the Diabolist myself, and I'm trying to think about what the process was because it was a long time ago. I think it was just about balance. I was just trying to figure out like how can I work it out where you're not going to be like statistically overpowering a comparably level character because you summoned a CR3 demon. And that's where I think I looked at Wizard for like the basics for spellcasting because I wanted them to be able to do some magic, right? Like you shouldn't be able to summon a very powerful demon and not also detect magic.
Yeah, totally.
But like I didn't want them to feel like casters. I wanted them to feel like their own distinct thing, and succeeded, I believe.
Yeah, the way you are talking about it, to me it flavors small bits from these other classes, but definitely its own thing.
Last time I played a Diabolist, my favorite usage was to use his things to summon like little winged, weak-ass demons that were just strong enough to carry him in tandem. So like he's like 3rd level, but effectively had a fly speed as long as we weren't in combat.
Right. Can summon
like
5 imps to just give you a little. That's
exactly
really cool.
Yeah, like a little. I think they're called Imperosi or something. Or no. Something like that. But and it was just like, well, we're a pit. Okay, well, I'll just fly over the pit. I have to carry me up the pit.
Yeah. So in playing it, or I guess if you were running a game when someone was playing it, how do you like to balance because how do you like to balance for someone that's going to summon a lot? Because I know like this is a class that would do that for sure. And then plenty of people love playing their necromancers, love playing their, shepherd druids or just summon based druids. And you end up with this, your druid just goes, I'm going to conjure woodland beings. Suddenly there's 8 blink dogs on your map to deal with.
Know what your things can do and make sure the player knows what their things can do and are like ready to do them when it's time to do them. Don't like discourage them from sitting there and like planning out and taking forever with their turn because they're going to get multiple turns. Just try to keep it snappy.
Yeah.
I don't actually have a stop clock when I'm playing with people, but internally there is a stop clock, and I'll start saying stuff like, "Okay, so you're going to," or I prompt them to continue, and the diabolist gets more prompting.
I mean, an actual stop clock might not be the worst idea.
Yeah, it might be more effective.
I have hosted variety shows where we try to have a 3-minute limit, and my next level up of this bit is having a large like timer on stage so everyone can see it counting down. And then when you reach 3 minutes, the clown with the leaf blower blows you off stage.
You should try a Flavor Flav pot, like a big.
Oh, hang it on the person as they're performing.
Oh, that's even better. I was going to say they're going to.
And then it like goes off and vibrates like a very light, like a palm, like a handshake shock when it goes off. Amazing. Wow. Okay. Sorcerer, Diabolist. Does anything else make the cut of like things that, I guess, again, either official or third party, but like things that are the coolest, most amazing, best class that you enjoy far too much? Unreasonably so.
I'm not wild about the name of the monk class, but I do like playing as monks. I like the versatility of like just like use my fists.
Yeah.
And then
I was just say I love monk. I love how monks to me break the speed in some of the action economy just by being a monk, and then you can like layer a bunch on top to make it even more and get throw in tabaxi and mobile, and you're like, cool, I've got 90 feet of base movement speed and then feline agility and other stuff. So,
they're the DPS class.
Yeah, totally. But I didn't mean to cut you off. You're going to mention something else.
So I also teach, like I mentioned, I teach courses for the RPG Writer Workshop and Storytelling Collective. And so the next course is going to be a class design course. And part of that was I took my hand at making the Speedster class. So like, play as the Flash not the Flash because he's way too fast, but like Quicksilver.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of, that one definitely looks familiar to the monk because how do you do that without looking familiar to the monk?
Yeah,
but
totally.
I'm very happy with how it came out. And it balances out with damage and still feels like, I am super fast. This is my thing.
Yeah.
Not just I hit stuff.
I have thought about this exact problem every once in a while, and it to me has seemed like a drunken monk with mobile gets you pretty close to Speedster in a way, because you're adding your unarmored movement bonuses and things. You have the drunken monk's ability to take multiple flurry of blows attacks on people if at a certain point. I think it's at higher-ish levels.
Yeah.
And you don't take opportunity attacks because you're mobile, whether or not you hit someone. So you just like zip around the battlefield and you get to land a punch on everyone, try to stun them. And at the end of your turn, you've used up, 4 key points and 90 feet of movement just running around, and no one can take an opportunity attack.
Like phase through stuff.
Yeah.
You can't, do this with your hand really fast to fly and,
It's true.
Leave a trail of flame behind you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm so disappointed by the official Drunken Monk. I've seen a couple of homebrews that were much cooler and way more solid. I have one of them on if you look up Shun-Di, SHUN-DI on my website, he's a character from Virtual Fighter. He's the Drunken Monk from Virtual Fighter, if you remember the old man, the cast.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
There's a link to a really great, much, much better version of the Drunken Monk archetype. Somebody else did. I don't even know. I just found online. I was like, oh, this guy gets it. Yeah.
I mean, okay. I will say I don't hate the official one, but I've not seen this. I think there's this funny sort of emphasis on words associated with drunkenness in it. There is drunken technique, tipsy sway, drunkard's luck, intoxicated frenzy. And yet there's not mechanics as much about actually perhaps being, the way of intoxication. I would equate it to what I know of like the, drunken boxing technique in Chinese Kung Fu, which is not actually really predicated on being drunk.
Yeah.
Except in Jackie Chan movies.
I was going to say, have you seen the Jackie Chan movie? Because the homebrew class I'm talking about, like, dude, nailed it.
It's that? Okay.
Yeah. He's even got like cute little names like hopping, or what was something like something grasshopper, and like
yeah.
it's got all
one of the from the original one, I remember, what is it? Fat old woman sits on toilet, where he tries to just like tailbone onto someone.
And that was like a comedy film, by the way. It wasn't just action. So like,
totally.
Like grain of salt, but like, no.
Yeah. Well, we will definitely put the link to this in show notes, and I'm going to go check it out when we're done talking, because now I want to know.
Oh my God, hi, you're listening to us. Thanks. I hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, if you could leave us a 5-star rating or review on the podcast platform that you prefer, it would give me, and I'm sure all of us, a massive dopamine hit. And it helps spread the word about our amazing show that we're all having so much fun doing. If you could follow us on social media, we're at The Roll Report Cast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and that's it. And if you really like us, and or you have all the money in the world, like some of our Bay Area friends do, you could support us at patreon.com/The Roll Report. Now back to the show.
Yeah. I want to circle back quickly before we get into subclasses. You are teaching courses on class design.
Yes, I like I said, I managed to level up Advanced 5th Edition project, and a lot of that was like retuning the classes to be a little more sober, right? So like no barbarians, they're called berserkers. Monks are called adepts. Paladins are called heralds, because the only paladins were in King Charlemagne's court. I don't understand how that proliferated to where we are now. And like so in addition to
someone picked the name 30 years
proud
ago.
Male, we call them.
Yeah,
proud males. So like so there are some substantial changes, like the barbarian or the berserker loses rage damage and gets its own like bank of rage hit points. And there's a new class called the marshal, which is about like giving your buddies extra actions and like being a commander on the battlefield. And then otherwise, it was a lot of focus on expanding the 2 pillars of play that 5e kind of ignores. The social and exploration pillars. You occasionally get a feature, like the ranger gets a couple, where it's like, this isn't about combat. This is about like overland travel. Now all the classes have their own strengths in those other pillars. Yeah, it is one of the best changes that we made.
Where is your next class happening, and when? I think is one important thing. And again, we'll have it in the show notes, but worth mentioning.
I sent the coursework to Ashley Warren, who is the wonderful person who runs the Storytelling Collective and RPG Writer Workshop, a couple of weeks ago. So it should be soon, but I don't know exactly when, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'll be surprised if it's not by the end of the year. I'll be actually a little mad.
Totally.
But
let me know whenever, and I'll keep my eye out. But like, as soon as there's a link, we'll put it in show notes, and take this class, because I'm excited about all the things that I have seen that you have shared with me already.
Thank you. And I got 2 classes I teach right now already. If you're trying to make a campaign setting primer, or to turn your campaign setting into like a nice published book.
Are those where can people find those?
Storytellingcollective.com. And I think RPGWriterWorkshop.com still works as well.
All right.
There's a bunch of classes. There's stuff on making your own comic book, on making your own short stories, novels, design a dungeon, market yourself in the RPG space, make your first adventure. There's a lot of courses.
Is there one or two that you would recommend for people that want to do more freelance writing and publishing? Either taught by you, or just ones that you have found super helpful?
Sure. If this is going to be your first thing, write your first adventure. go ahead and join that and take that course. If for no other reason than like the community on the Discord server and their like help motivating you and refining what you're doing. Otherwise, I would say mine is the best, but that's only because I have dedicated office hours. Like every week, I will be around on Friday to help you like figure out your Kickstarter page or get through this or that thing, or maybe like a little bit of editing or whatever. And I don't think anybody else has office hours. Like they're around and they'll help. Like
sure,
yeah, it's just not
but
like
not
every
like
week.
Every week at this time, you can find me and you can ask for help.
Exactly.
Amazing. Go listeners, go check those out if you're thinking about writing a thing. And if you're thinking about it, write a damn thing. Why not?
I'll help you.
Yeah. So moving on a little bit to our subclasses or archetypes. Lay it on me. Favorite thing you most unreasonably like?
Well, as I already talked about that during the month. But for official, I like the Shadow Sorcerer a lot. Obviously like I'm into dark stuff. In terms of like what you get for it, it's great. Like you get like to cherry pick one of the best warlock tactics with like the first couple of features, and then you get to summon like a Shadow Hound, which is dope and nobody else can do. And Shadow Walk is great, and if only because like now you don't have to cast Misty Step, so you can teleport and cast a decent spell in the same round. And then Incorporeality is unusually hard to get your hands on in 5e for good reason. But they get it. So.
They get it, and they even get it a couple levels before 20th when it can like still do a lot of good.
Oh, I completely forgot about Epic 5e. We only have so much time. I made Epic rules. If you go to epic5e.com, you can find them. I made the Kickstarter did super well. It's how we were able to buy the house that we live in. We didn't buy it. We got the mortgage down. Well, if Stephanie had been listening to me and saving money the whole time, like I was telling her, then that wouldn't have been necessary. But thank God.
When she listens to this episode and hears this moment.
Good. I'm still mad about it. Like we would have money in the bank if she had just listened to me, but it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, epic5e.com. And it's about taking the game from like 21st to 30th level. And there's also adventure support for it too. So if you want something like, I think, is it Hit Point Press who did the really big one? They got a whole bunch of epic books. This isn't that. It's like one book that easily adds into your 3 existing books and uses all the same rules and is like the thriftier, lighter version of epic rules.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I did a lot of classwork in that too, because obviously everything needs another 10 classes. You can find the whole Epic Artificer actually on epic5e.com. And then epic features for all of the archetypes up to a certain point. I think sometime in 2021 or 2022 is where I put the cutoff. I feel like
at a certain point you got to move on and you know. Yeah. Also you've already taken people beyond most campaigns. Honestly, the
epic campaigns I ran were super fun.
I really want to experience that at some point because I have played one game where we got our characters to 20 and it was this like I want to say it was sort of a modified Descent into Avernus. It was just rampage through the 9 hells for varying reasons, and it also was where I realized that Bard's 20th levels suck. I was playing a Glamour Bard and I was looking and was just like, wait a minute, at 20th level, and I've said this a lot on this podcast, at 20th level, currently in 5e, your capstone is if you start combat with no bardic inspiration, you get 3 or 4. And
their real capstone is 9th level spells. Let's be perfectly honest. Yeah.
I mean, yes, and if you look at like, okay, so, Shadow Sorcerer at 18th level. Again, 18th, not even 20th. Yeah. 6 sorcery points, which you have a fair amount. And you are
Ultra damage
amazing
resistance,
shadowy resistance to everything but Force and Radiant. And and just the regular, the plain, where am I? There we go.
So like Bard has this weird pocket where they're able to break bounded accuracy in a way that nobody else can, right? Like the total that the Bard can't do it because they can't target themselves most of the time unless you're like that one specific subclass. But it allows you to reach numbers that are otherwise completely out of reach. Like you can get a DC 40 result on a check because the bard was around, but otherwise it's not possible.
Yeah.
So that's why they get the shorts there. It's because
I understand that there's all the balance in the things, but I'm still just like, man, that's like a really kind of wimpy 20th level thing. Anyway,
that's something we did level up. We fixed all the capstones.
Amazing. See, more reasons to go check out Mike's work and support an amazing freelance writer. Okay, so yeah, Shadow Magic, love it. Great sorcerer. Unofficial subclasses.
My favorite unofficial one is there's a Samurai Sacred Oath paladin archetype in the Mists of Akuma book, and it's everything that you want from like an anime samurai. You get the Ijutsu strike, which is super cool, by the way. Is a real thing where you draw, strike, and like resheath your sword in like one smooth motion. And when they took cameras to Japan shortly after cameras were invented, like motion film cameras, they couldn't capture some of these samurai doing it, which is just so ridiculous.
It's so cool that is, I think, a hallmark of both samurai literature, anime, movies forever. Is I feel like that technique is always like how the samurai is measured against his opponents. I say his because almost always entirely classically male.
There were like Tomo Gozen, there were some female samurai. It wasn't as bad as it is like with 1950s America.
Not exclusive, but I feel more okay saying his as a general statement about a samurai than I would about many other things.
And I want to bring up, since we're going to be talking more about samurai, samurai were not super awesome people. There's this very strong propaganda campaign by the Japanese government in the run-up to World War II where they mythologized samurai because it served their purposes, obviously. If you want to get an idea of what samurai were really like, there's an amazing book called Musui's Story, written by very sober samurai in the Tokugawa era, shortly before the end of the Tokugawa era, which is like the isolationist period. And you will get a much better idea of what samurai were really like in I guess at this point, ancient Japan.
Yeah.
Strong recommend. Great read. Will be very surprising for you.
I feel like there's a similar thing that happened. I think in America, our equivalent is the gunslinger.
Yeah,
in the West, we have it's until probably the last 20 or 30 years, it was hugely mythologized. The gunslinger was always like almost always exclusively the noble white man who may have like fought in the Civil War and been scarred and now is like trying to bring law.
The best gunslinger was Bass Reeves. He was very much not a white guy.
Very much not. And just, I think now there is more acknowledgement of everything was kind of brutal and terrible and everyone sucked and everyone fought each other and died all the time in horrible ways. And
usually from like sepsis or infection or some like very easily
the
cured thing.
Oregon Trail was real. Like everyone died of dysentery all the time.
Dysentery killed more people in the Civil War than anything else.
Yeah. And I feel like there was a similar thing with samurai. My perception is that like I think the Western idea, the thing that's communicated to Westerns, if we say a samurai is a similar like you are the noble swordsman. We may have associations of like extreme fanatical loyalty and devotion to your sworn lord and some things, but but I think that is the stereotyping. That is the image that comes across. And I think the reality is much more conflicted.
Like those were the standout weird ones. Like 47 Ronin was a real thing that really happened. Their master died, they got revenge, and then they all killed themselves, which is so crazy, but it really happened. But yeah, like the Japanese government like saw what was going on. They were like, we got to really motivate these people, and they just pushed samurai propaganda really hard. And that's why like a lot of warriors carried their samurai swords into World War II because like what? They're not going to chop anybody. Are you kidding me?
But it's it's a whole thing.
But like they were fed this line and they all ate it up. And I get it. It's a cool line. Like whoever was making the sale was making a good sale.
We ate up lines about gunslingers for 100 years.
Yeah.
You know?
True.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I feel like
So the Mists of Akuma subclass, right? So there's Ijutsu Strike. That's the main thing. And like the doctrines, right? Like we're just talking about how like they're supposed to be super honorable and loyal and all that stuff. Yeah. That fits right in with those paladin tenets, right? Like just like a glove. I was amazed when they did a fighter samurai. I was like, why? Why are you doing a fighter samurai? And then it took us forever to get the like it happened a lot in Samurai Champloo where like they just like dash by somebody
Mm,
and
mhm.
like there would be a strike, but you wouldn't see it, and then like blood flies everywhere. We
Right.
got that feature. It took us several days of arguing between like multiple people, but we nailed it. We got it.
Uh-huh.
And then
Uh-huh.
if you work it in with your Iijitsu strike at the start of a combat, it's automatically a critical hit. So like if you're playing the samurai well, you open up fights with these huge like disemboweling bloodshed strikes
Uh-huh.
that are just like perfect.
Cool. Well, and so they're a paladin class, so you get smites on those, yes? Or
Yep,
did
you
you
can smite it up too.
specialize them further to okay.
Yeah.
I mean, horrifying. Utterly you have taken one of the biggest damage dealing classes and made it do a whole ton more damage, and I both love that, and as a DM I'm just going, oh my god, what have you done? What have you done?
It works. We had a samurai for almost the entirety of my 7-year Mr. Akuma campaign, and he didn't like overdo it, but he carried his weight. He did a good job.
Uh-huh. Well, and I feel like that is a good segue to talk about Mists of Akuma because one, we're gonna talk about like big Kickstarter coming up, and two, it's huge, it's massive. It seems like it is a big thing that you've been working on for a while. So
There's the
tell me
samurai
about Mists of
actually right
Akuma.
there.
Perfect.
Bam, that guy.
Oh, I love the flag. The flag is a really nice touch.
The Sashimoto. Mists of Akuma. So like I had already made Varanthia Codex, which is kind of like a kitchen sink setting. And then I really love Shadowrun, but I hate playing Shadowrun. If you ever played Shadowrun, you might understand what I mean. So
I've heard stories. I've heard many legends.
You got to roll to shoot, okay? And then they roll to dodge. And then if you hit them, then they roll to soak. And then I think there's another roll involved, and that's your first shot. You got multiple shots, and then if somebody, God forbid, gets wired reflexes or another way to take multiple actions in turn, then they're shooting like 6 times a turn. So like their turn cannot take less than 5 minutes just because they have to count a bathtub of dice multiple times.
I mean, our social media manager does love to say we roll dice in this game, but that's a lot of dice.
So much dice rolling, and it's such a cool world. And so I figured out a way to I made a campaign setting called Hypercore 2099, which is where my dragon is from.
Cool.
Where it's like take Pathfinder and then throw a rules template. Have you ever played Mythic Adventures for Pathfinder?
I have played very little Pathfinder.
Okay, it's like it's sort of like their epic rules, but it's more like you're demigods. You could start at first level because they've.
Which is real. Like I think the power imbalance between adventurers and other people in D&D and many other systems is huge.
Yeah. Well, so I also didn't like Mythic Adventures because like it's a rules template you put on top of the regular Pathfinder rule set, but it goes too far and just makes all your characters feel invincible, which is lame. You want to have some drama. You want to feel like you can lose and die. And so we took it in the opposite direction, Hypercore, and it's this like superhero cyberpunk setting where you can easily die and also throw cars and a bunch of other stuff. So I did that, and then while I was working on it one night at like 3 a.m, I was like, man, what would have happened differently if like in 1854 when Commodore Matthew Perry sailed into Edo Harbor and like pointed his cannons at it and was like, we're friends now. Like, would it be different if Japan had like actual magic? And then I ran around in my head, and that's where Mists of Akuma started. So it's this Eastern fantasy noir steampunk campaign setting where for the past 160 years ago, these technologically superior soldiers flew out of the Great Divide on planes and subjugated Soberin and took it over for about 150 years during what's called the Kengan occupation. And then the rightful emperor led a rebellion about 10 years beforehand in the setting, anyway, and overthrew the remaining foreigners who had been like cut off from their armies and stuff across the Great Divide, which is this huge energy wall that just surrounds all of Soberin and its seas, and there's nothing get past it. It's got an anti-magic field in it. You basically have to have like a very durable plane to get through. So that's where like the noir comes in, because like these other countries, Ceramia and Ropeo, Ceramia being an anagram for America, which makes Ropeo pretty obvious what Ropeo is, destroy the world. And like Soberin endures and persists, but it's going very poorly. And the Mists of Akuma have come back, and the Mists of Akuma like draw all the virtue out of people, and ultimately, if there's none left, transform them into Adeto Oni, which are these like fast zombies. Think like 28 days later, but also jumping. And yeah, they're just ravaging.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're ravaging the countryside, and like to try to survive, some of the prefectures have turned back to technologies that they've spurned from the Kengan occupation, and that's where the steampunk comes in. So yeah, Eastern fantasy noir steampunk campaign setting.
So, Jesus, wow. And it's okay. So as I'm remembering / reading what you sent me, so this was released first 8 years ago.
Yes.
And you have just added new books and new adventures onto it.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to actually shut off the thing. Yeah. So this was the original book 8 years ago.
Cool.
It is cool, but it's all like white on black, and feels very like gothic and stuff. Nothing's colored. And then here is the print proof for the new one, which is very pretty.
Already exists. Very full color. Oh, I love that.
It's 420 pages.
Giant.
There's full color and this amazing map for the capital. And yeah, I've been working on this for 8 years. There are 12 regular adventures, 1 mega adventure. This will be also the release of the second adventure path, the Beyond the Great Divide adventure path, right? And then also 2 books of like encounters from 1st to 20th level.
Cool.
I love it. And there's a bunch of ukiyo art, which is why there's so much of it. Because when you make RPG books, the biggest expenditure that you have is on illustrations. And all the ukiyo art I use is in the public domain because it's well over 75 years old. And so I mean, I have the artwork to go with the writing. So there's more of Akuma than any of my other stuff.
So 4 complete books, 5 complete books.
Yeah,
Total.
4. Well, I mean, if you count Trade War and Imperial Matchmaker, and Beyond the Great Divide, campaign setting, vignette, well, so 7.
I think for me, and like specifically this new Kickstarter, there's like a cat outside crying, or it's a small child. Really hard to tell which. Slightly distracting. When is this Kickstarter going to launch, and what are people getting at various levels, I guess?
Okay. It is going to launch sometime in September because this morning, as of the recording, I got my first look at like the new revised 5.5 edition monster stat block, and it's much more different than we were told to believe. So if you want to get the old 5e version, I have that. It's ready to go, but I want to make a 5.5e version. It's going to take me all month to convert all these books over. But yeah, September is, I got to run it by September, or I'm going to be in terrible financial straits by the end of the year. So it'll be running next month. You can sign up for the Kickstarter now. Right. The page is up.
We'll put a link in the notes. Go check it out. I guess because I want to know, in this day and age, I imagine someone is going to go, hey, why are you writing about a Asian or Japanese influenced setting? Who's on your team? So can you tell me a little bit about the team writing? And I guess I want to say, like, did people check the book? What? I don't know.
Okay.
The question is not fully framed in my mouth, but I think you know what I'm getting at.
I got you. So when we made Mists of Akuma 8 years ago, nobody was doing any kind of sensitivity reading in the RPG industry, but we did. We had a class in Japan, like as their senior project, they went through the manuscript for Mists of Akuma and were like, hey, I know that you think this word means this, but like we use it to refer to old men who grab girls on the subway. And so we changed the name of that city and we made all the other changes that they suggested. They were all good suggestions. But yeah, they were like just super thrilled. They were like, this is awesome. I think there is still a Mists of Akuma game being run in that high school. I look forward to dropping in on it when I go there for my honeymoon next year. And then there was an illustrator we had, Sarah Shijo, from the original team. She does this beautiful, let me see if I can grab one of them real quick. Very ethereal looking artworks. Chapters. One second. But she was the only Asian person on the original team. And then for Beyond the Great Divide, one of the authors is a guy named Anthony Alipio. He is, and I'm not 100% on this because I don't bother asking him. Here's one of Sarah's illustrations that I colored.
Oh, cool.
See what I'm saying? Like she just has this really super
Yeah, that's
graceful
amazing.
penmanship. Yeah, Anthony, I think has Filipino ancestry, but again, don't quote me on that. It might be some other Southeastern Pacific thing.
Not quoted. Yeah.
Yeah. And he wrote like a third of the Beyond the Great Divide adventure path. He wrote Seven Sacred Grains, which is loosely based on the Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa. And then Hunting the Demon Stag, and then one of the connections between all the different adventures. Cool. That was all Anthony.
Great. I mean, to me, it also means a lot. Like, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, this sort of thing was not important unless it was important to you, or you
people were like,
as the creator,
Adventures, bring it back. Which I like that book, but we could call it something else, right? You know?
Yeah, probably.
One thing I'd like to bring up that is probably going to be a little contentious, so I apologize if somebody doesn't like it. So I agree that you should always have sensitivity readers. My last campaign setting, I had one, even though like it was based on Zelda, basically, right? But just to be like responsible, right? You should have sensitivity readers. But I don't think that we should necessarily like forbid people from writing about cultures that are not part of their personal history. And I say this because, like, when you play D&D, do you play British fantasy, or do you do German fantasy, or do you do Western fantasy? You play Western fantasy, right? And if you start putting up these like fences, what's going to happen is like, I'm only going to be qualified to write about Western fantasy. That's all I'm going to write. And the other guy, and the other guy, and the other guy. And by the 9th time, you might get somebody who can do something other than Western fantasy, but it's going to create this myopic. Like, there's just not going to be Eastern fantasy books. There's not going to be a diversity of stuff because, like, and Anthony never would have written for Mists of Akuma if I hadn't made it, right? And he's an Asian guy. So, like,
I don't disagree with you. I think it is part of a larger conversation that we're having, both like within gaming and within hopefully larger societal context of appropriation versus just appreciation and interpretation.
And like that's one of the things. So, like, the first chapter, The Mists of Akuma, is about the history of the world, and the first like big picture you see is this guy. Right? It's a bunch of Western ships and like airplanes and stuff. So like we come right out of the book and we're like, this is basically by colonists. We don't hide that. We don't try to avoid it. It's right there in your face for the reason, because we want you to know, like, this is the lens we are seeing it through, because it's the lens we got.
And it's a lens. I think that acknowledgement is important, and having the deep respect and admiration for the culture that you're writing about, which I'm going to say, to me, I feel like you definitely have that.
I spent. I like Japanese people too, but I spent like 5 years of my life waiting tables in Chinese restaurants. So, like, I definitely don't want to make Mrs. Liu angry at me. And, I love you, Linda.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a large difference between that and, say, random white American man looking at like.
Don't make
Chinese
a
mythology. Yeah. And
like I mean, I know a lot of people like Anime 5e, but I took one look at that and I was like, no, pass.
I mean, and again, it's just appreciation versus appropriation, and like making sure you fall on the appreciation side, whatever steps you're taking to do that.
Be respectful, be smart, think about it as many angles as you can, and you'll probably be okay. Like, some people got angry about
someone on the internet
is.
Someone on the internet is always angry.
No, they were right.
Something.
They were right. This is, I mean, like, I don't think it's like outright racist. It's not like wearing a hood, but like, it's not exactly like, I'm glad they helped me figure out a better font for it. And I think the book is better for it. So like, I forget the name of that podcast, but thank you guys for helping me like be a better person and make a better book.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for listening to constructive criticism, which a lot of people can't do.
Oh, don't do that if you're trying to make RPG books. Don't be one of those guys.
That seems like an excellent segue to say, if you want to hear all the rest, and we'll probably talk about more of this stuff and more of this campaign setting support The Roll Report on Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/The Roll Report.
Good. We ended on the most contentious thing I said. Awesome. Dope. Dope. I'm glad this is where the free stops, everyone.
We got past that to the be nice, be honest, take constructive criticism, and it's important if you're going to be a freelancer and publish your own writing. That's what we're ending on.
Fair.
No, I mean, I think both of those are it is a fair point to make, and I honestly I don't think it's especially contentious. I think saying everyone should write about everything is maybe contentious, but like we should not.
One of my favorite authors that we picked up for Level Up is Yvonne Hisao, who like lives in Taiwan and grew up in Taiwan, and like, who the hell would I be to tell her like, no, you can't write Western fit? Like, what?
Yeah.
No, please come write the West. I want to see your perspective on this, and it's awesome. Everything she did is great.
Fantastic.
She does a ton of stuff for Paizo now. Like,
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So, and we're gonna do the where can everyone find you at the very end? But like briefly, where is the fastest place for people to find you, Mike?
Oh, MikeMyler.com.
There we go.
With the Y, MYLER.
MYLER, and it will be in our show notes because I'm going to make it happen. And then, now goodbye behind the Patreon wall. Capitalism. Amazing.
Yeah.
Find all of these things on Kickstarter. It will be up in September. We will have a link in the notes. Check out epic5e.com and mikemyler.com and Chris Rippey.
Chris Rippey.
Anti-Hero Blues.
Who, incidentally, Chris wrote the, if you get like the original Mists of Akuma and in Trade War, he wrote the Revenge of the Pale Master, which is this like adventure for 9th level characters that is very creepy and very dope. Yeah, see this?
There we
Look
go.
at this. This was drawn by somebody hundreds of years ago.
And it's amazing.
Right? Like
there's some really I feel like there's a lot of older classical pre-19th century art from around the world that are the stereotype perception of it is like very dated, very weird, the stylistically clearly 100 200 years old, and you're like no, there's also this whole almost every art form I think has this whole subgenre where 200 years ago they were making something that looks like it could have been made now.
The exception of Bosch, the Western world kind of sucks.
That guy's fucking weird.
But like in Japan, they had this era of isolationism that lasted for 250 years that America ended in like 1854, I was talking about. And during that period, they only talked to the Dutch for trading. So when everybody else got the typable print press, the Gutenberg printing press, that didn't come to Japan. So they just kept using lithograph printing, which is a lot like screen shirts, right? So that's why there's so much amazing ukiyo-e's, because that was the only kind of printing they did for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So there's like lots of good remaining copies that like are archived by museums and stuff. And there's just nothing like that in the Western world.
Yeah. And can turn it into amazing art for a campaign setting.
Yes.
Fabulous. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. This has been such a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm going to say good luck with the Kickstarter. I hope it does everything and it seems amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Keep all of our fingers crossed.
So concerned about making 5.5e versions the next month, but it'll be good. I'm sure it'll all work out.
It'll be good. And you know what? Then there'll be 6th edition in a few years anyway, just constant updates. Or maybe we'll all move away from D&D because wizards suck. Who knows?
That's a whole nother hour and a half conversation.
Oh man. Yeah. Don't have nearly enough time to get into that. Someday we will. Thank you so much for joining us, listeners, and stay tuned for more.